Hello, my name is Luca, and I'd like to bring you some light. Politics. Oh man, in so many social circles, families, it's incredibly divisive for those that care about politics. And for those that do not, many either believe that their vote doesn't matter, or politics are merely a charade for more powerful organizations that actually run the world. But regardless of which one you believe, the game of politics does play an important role in how our world functions. So I want to take some time to look at it and really build a concrete viewpoint that allows us to not only see all the problems but try to come up with a solution. So, anyways, let's get it.
What does it mean to me? And how do I get free? What does it mean to me? And how do I get free?
So, as an amusing way, I thought it would be a rather amusing way to start this off to show that there is a fundamental problem with our government and how it operates. In this chart from 2018, it was one of the best charts I could find for it, that shows the most and least trusted professions. So, here at the top of the list, the most trusted profession is nurses. Yeah, they usually tell it to you like it is, even more so than a doctor might, right? So, we trust our nurses, doctors, and pharmacists, right? And in the least trusted individuals start here with, you know, all the way from journalists, of course, and lawyers, business executives, car salesmen, and the number one most mistrusted occupation would be members of Congress. So, well, there you go. And that kind of rolls into this next idea here, which is the typical U.S. Congress member is 12 times richer than the typical American household. So yeah, the median member of the U.S. Congress had a net worth of at least 1.1 million. So some a little less and some a lot more, I'm sure. But the senators are even higher at like 3.2 million. So the more powerful you become in government, the richer you become. Is that really the way it should be? So let's also give this next piece of evidence, which is pretty well known, that members of Congress and government in large, people that are privy to information that the rest of us are not, involved in the decisions that affect the very stocks that they are allowed to trade. So when Obama was in office, it was a law was put into place, which was the Stock Act, which was supposed to keep members of government from taking advantage of their position, using it for trading, on the stock market or whatever. And basically, for the ones that actually comply, because most of the members are actively trading, either them or their family members, and they basically use insider information legally, even though it is against the law technically. They're supposed to report all of their trades, but a lot of them don't do it, and there's no enforcement for when they do not report, and no one has ever seen any fines or any punishment as a result of violating the Stock Act. So there's no enforcement, no one ever gets in trouble, and basically everyone's using the information that they're privy to that everyone else is not as a basis for trading, and we can't assume that they're all necessarily using that information, to benefit their trading. However, a lot of them do. So we contrast all the behaviors of the members of government with the average household net worth, and it starts at if you're the age of the head of family is less than 35, the median net worth, which is a number that you get by taking all of the total net worth and then dividing it by however many people. So that would indicate that a lot of people in this age group probably have negative net worth, or very little wealth, because there would be a lot of very wealthy people in that age group that would cause that median number to rise, and the average net worth is obviously much higher because the average is simply derived different than the median. So the median's kind of giving you more of a perspective on what the household's actual wealth is like, although it doesn't really tell the full picture either. So obviously, the average net worth that regular American families have is much less than the typical member of government. And you could argue that these are much more successful people, and it was their job before they got into government that allowed them to achieve their wealth, and that's probably true in many cases. But almost all of them see their wealth considerably increase while they're in office, and I'm of the belief that they wouldn't be doing it in most cases, since many of these are people who are focused on business and gains. They probably wouldn't be doing the job if there wasn't money to be made and power to be gained from it. So I don't think that we have the right incentives for people to be altruistic members of government at this point. You never hear any politicians campaigning on campaign finance, but it's quite possibly one of the most important elements of our government that is broken. And this one small piece of evidence just shows you, prescription politics, this article says. More than 2/3 of Congress cashed a pharma campaign check in 2020. And one of the things that I thought was interesting as I was looking through this is that the organizations that make these donations to politicians, it's not tax deductible. And you have to be wondering, if it's not tax deductible, then why are they doing it? Well, it's because they feel that they're going to be well represented by the people that happen to take that check. And really, this shouldn't be allowed at all. Just not at all. Beyond the concerns of these organizations having more influence on these candidates who are cashing these checks, isn't this kind of taking away from the concept of free and fair elections? Because not everybody has this kind of resource. And how are we really incentivizing the best ideas if the only ones who are able to really get their stamp of approval have to be filtered through two different political parties that have their own allegiances? And then everyone that you're trying to go against as an independent or a small politician who has big ideas and wants to get out there, you'll have to do everything for yourself, because these organizations are not going to write you a check unless they know that you're going to be supporting whatever their narrative is and whatever they want you to support. So as these organizations own more and more of the government and their lobbying money increases more and more, it becomes more and more likely that you completely shut out all of the brilliant political ideas because they're never resourced properly. But that's just my thoughts. I stated that I don't want to just point out problems, but provide solutions, and we need a complete overhaul of campaign finance to the degree of no organization should be able to donate. Only individuals, and that's not going to solve the problem either. But you give them a limit, a hard limit that's very low, just very low, to where people have to actually use grassroots and people believing in causes rather than just getting completely shoved in your face in the media because the advertising dollars are so huge. That shouldn't be how we decide political candidates who has the most funding for advertising, and that really creates a bad system. And as far as I'm concerned, anything that has to just get advertised over and over and over again is probably not a good product. Just saying. You might be seeing some weird advertisements here and there that make you think that they're heavily advertising a bad product. Anyway, So beyond the finances being purified, ranked voting would be another big step towards improving us having true democracy. Ranked voting says, hey, I want this one first, this one second, this one third, this one fourth, this one fifth, so on and so forth. And you can use this to vote on individuals for a particular office, or any kind of proposal, really. And that's where I could see this applied more broadly to allow people to actually get involved in the meaningful decisions in the day-to-day and where we're going as a nation and a world. Right now you largely just choose between A or B. You're like, oh, I'm lucky I get to choose between two things and they're both bad, but this is what we got, so I'm going to go with the least bad option. Well, in ranked voting, you could have someone, maybe no one could come to a consensus on the number one, so the number two option that everybody had down there ends up being the preferred one. And even though it wasn't necessarily the first pick of 52%, it was the second pick of 80%. So this actually ends up being the best compromise. And I think that the concept that we are either A or B keeps us wildly swinging left and right. This broken wings of this bird need to stop swinging left and right and start learning how to flap your wings together. That's how you really fly. Go, I don't know. We've reached a point where people fundamentally don't even trust voting. And that's why I feel, not only from a security standpoint, but also from the ability of people to be able to reestablish trust in voting, we need to have voting on the blockchain. And as usual, ADA is best set up for this in the future. They already run a governance program which allows users of Cardano to vote on the projects that will get funding from this treasury that builds up from every transaction that happens. So every transaction that happens on Cardano, a small part of that goes to this treasury, and then the users of Cardano get to decide where those funds go, and that helps the future development. So you basically have an open source incentivized development system where actual users of Cardano get to decide what gets developed, and it's a great system. And as it evolves, it will be able to run world governments easily. I mean, it already could, because it's doing far more complex voting than what we have in our current systems. And everyone's vote being to be able to be tracked on the blockchain and then verified to an identity will reestablish trust in voting. And if you combine reestablishing trust in voting with ranked voting, which would allow people to not only decide about political candidates, but then we could start actually being able to decide as a society what we want to do together. And that would just be revolutionary. It would be true democracy rather than this representative democracy that we have now, which I want to point out some more of the flaws here in just a moment. If you look over the history of presidential candidates and the runoffs and the actual election, who won, who was the runner-up, and the other candidates, you see that we've had a variety of political parties that were vying for power throughout the years. And we used to have some pretty strong drive in the country for socialist and populist agendas, even communism. And it's largely been flushed out, I guess, but I think it's important to recognize that the socialist communist streak has always been here in America. It's not new. And what you see here is just, really the political parties are just boiling down to Republican and Democrat now, even though we've had a lot of variety of different parties in the past. And, who's to say if you had preferential or ranked voting, what would we have ended up with some of these other candidates over here on the right that maybe from a balanced perspective, most people on both sides would have rather had that sort of balanced opinion that runs in the middle. But you can't have that because we have two-party politics. And they're constantly fighting against each other rather than flying together, right? That's not how wings are supposed to work. And so to further the concept of representational democracy, I wanted to show just from a presidential election where you're basically given two candidates to choose from. Whoever ends up getting elected also gets all of these different offices, all these cabinet positions that they are then allowed, to assign without any vote. Secretary of the Treasury, I want you. Secretary of State, I want you. All of these important positions that the people of America did not get to decide. And some of these positions are arguably more important than the president, as he is largely a figurehead and an actor, right? So these other positions are actually functional heads of different pieces of government that have a large, an important piece to play in how our country works. And whenever all of these are just assigned by a person who happened to win 52% of the popular vote of the country, which means that it's basically 50-50, pretty close, then they get to assign all these powerful positions. And then things will just get imbalanced again, and then all kinds of Republicans will be voted in, and all of these people will be kicked out. This constant swinging back and forth keeps us from ever being able to get anything done productively in government. And, people don't like it. And this is why members of government, members of Congress especially, are the most untrusted profession that exists. To tie that all together, I wanted to talk about representative democracy and how terrible it really is. I just showed you, just from a president being elected, how many different powerful positions they get to elect without an election. This is known as indirect democracy, where elected persons represent a group of people in contrast to direct democracy. So we should be able to vote ourselves on all of the issues. Okay? There's no reason, with all of the technology that we have, that if an important bill comes up, the whole nation shouldn't be voting. And when there are important votes, man, everything needs to shut down like it's Christmas, but even the Waffle House is closed, so that everybody can have an opportunity to go vote. If you talk about presidential elections, I can't even tell you how many presidential elections I didn't participate in because I was working, and it was too much of an inconvenience. And, largely, I don't think it would have mattered anyways, but that's something to talk about in the future. So that's just a beginning breakdown of some of the things that are wrong with how our government works now, and some of the things we could change to fix it. I look forward to talking more about this in the future. Y'all have a good day.